Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Modern Business Operations. My name is Sagi. I'm the CEO and founder of Tonkean. And today I have the great pleasure of hosting Michael Bouchet, the Chief Information Officer of Newfold Digital. Hey, Michael. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, maybe let's start with, like any episode, tell us a little bit about how did you get to be a CIO? A little bit of your journey up to this point.
It's an interesting question. I didn't get here intentionally. I think it was more by happenstance. I think I built my career on moving from one emergency to another. People that needed help in a pinch, and I have moved from place to place, company to company, helping people kind of manage chaos and bring chaos to order. And it's really how I ended up being CIO as well. Being brought in at the heels of a pretty big mess, and then being asked to, how do we fix this? So if all I could say is, if you want to be a CIO in life, you have to be able to appreciate chaos, understand how to operate in chaos, potentially for some time, and then knowing though that your direction is to bring order to that over time.
It's funny you said that. The first thing comes to my mind is how's the last few years chaos found you?
Well, that's interesting too. So at Newfold Digital, I joined in February 20, and COVID hit in March. So I came in to help a company that went from public to private, bring some order to the chaos that was part of that transition. And then literally 3 days later, we're into COVID. And it's a company that was very brick and mortar. We did not have a lot of work from home capabilities. And I was asked, hey, you've got 3 days, figure out how to get the whole company to work from home. And then to your point, I have a goal, so let's go figure it out. To a team that I just met, that's only worked for me less than 2 weeks, and we are now to figure that out. So that's the space you have to be comfortable operating in.
It's I get to talk to a lot of leaders in the last year around that sort of like rapid transition, or sort of like the externalities that comes in. And I think this is a really simple though accurate way of thinking about it. Like, how do you bring order to the chaos? So what was maybe some of the tactics or things that made that successful, right? Especially being completely new to the team and the situation. Sometimes trust is very important when you go in like a dark, blindfolded sort of like type of analogy, but where you just parachuted into this company just a few weeks in. What of some of the tactics you used that worked?
Well, you actually hit the nail on the head with the one word, that's trust. I mean, for a group of people that have been through some pretty dramatic change, we have changed leadership. They changed going from public to a privately held company. And all of a sudden there's this new guy coming in and, barking orders at you. Why am I following this guy? I think first and foremost, people need to understand you as a person, as a human being, what drives you, what's important to you. And I think, and I don't want to say that like I'm putting on some sort of show. That's not it at all. You have to be transparent almost to a fault. People have to understand your anxiety too. They have to feel that this is something real, and they have to be able to get some genuine feeling from you. And so pretty early on, it was quite a few, I don't want to say all hands meetings, but, fairly broad scope, 30, 35 people on a conference call, and talking about, hey, we've just been given a mission to get, 4,000 people to work from home in 30 days. And we only have the stuff that's in front of you to make that happen. So I know we don't have all the right tools, and this may not be the best way to do it, but we're going to have to push through this. And because we won't be operating in our call centers, because we're a large part of our company is contact center employees. How do we get them working from home and helping our customers in the same fashion in 30 days from now, so that we can keep this business running? Because that's how desperate this is. So that being able to see that it's a certain degree of vulnerability, it's a certain degree of transparency and communication. Just let your guard down a little bit, and people tend to respond to that and appreciate the situation.
What's fascinating to me is just when you look at the timing a little bit, right? And we're recording this in what is it? Almost April, like end of March of 23, and everything around AI, right? And the wave that is coming. But even before edge technology in general, and then the solution is always seems to be, and you kind of brought this front and center, is you need to be human, right? You need to come to this problem vulnerable, transparent, we need to solve this. And I think a lot of people find, and again, you're obviously coming from technology, right? I personally come from technology, but throwing technology on a problem is almost never the solution. And I think, as you talk through it, it wasn't about bringing new technology. It's about sort of like building that trust, and technologies are the way. There might be the vehicle, or there might be, I don't know if the vehicle is the right analogy, but there might be sort of like the tooling, but they're not, to yield the tool, you kind of like need the people to kind of feel human. So how do you see that maybe on a broader discussion, because zooming out a little bit from COVID and that change, just in general, how do you think about technology as part of like running an operation versus where the people relationship and processes or just even culture comes into play?
Well, great question, because we're the company that I'm a part of has grown through over 90 acquisitions in the past 15 years. It's a staggering number of acquisitions. So to your point, you're absorbing a lot of change over a long period of time, and people appreciating what problem you're trying to solve first before you throw technology or tech at it, for lack of a better word. A big part, 80% of what we do is we help small businesses do their job. So if we can't, these are small businesses without IT shops. They don't have technology people. They just have a technology problem. But to your point, you could throw tech words and tech at it, but it really comes down to somebody on the phone just listening to their plight, saying, I'm trying to reach this demographic with my product. How do I set up a website and get email and do an advertising campaign? And I don't know the first thing about what I'm doing. And it's a lot of what we do. So it's, to your point, we could lead with the technology, or we could lead with the human element. And a lot of these problems only get solved in understanding uniqueness of somebody's situation and where they're at and their business life cycle and where they're trying to go with it. Because we have, unfortunately, right or wrong, we have more than enough products and tech to throw at it, which can probably make it worse if you implement it incorrectly. So getting a human being on the phone, at the end of the day, as much as we try to do through chat and email, which we do, it does boil down to getting somebody from our professional services team and talking with them and saying, let's take a step back. Let's understand what you're trying to accomplish, and let's order these things in the right order, so that we can actually deliver something for you of value to you, as opposed to a transaction. And that's a lot in how I run even my IT shop. It's like, don't worry about the ticket or the transaction. Let's just talk about what this person needs, and we'll worry about the logistics later. I'm more important. I want somebody to tell me that I had a huge problem and this person just called me on a Saturday night and they helped me get through it, because I had a big report I had to do. as opposed to, well, you didn't fill out this ticket correctly, or yeah, I'm not worried about the transactional piece of it. That'll fix itself.
I talk a lot about the difference between focusing the experience, focusing the process, focusing um, the effort on the data, or you do sort of like, and the data is like a broad term to kind of describe the ticket in one hand, or or sort of like the tactical problem, versus focusing it on the person, on the people, on the element of it. What's interesting is what I found, and kind of curious to your thoughts, is that we kind of got it wrong a little bit in that last 20 years of like software and tools, which was all built for the data aspect of it, versus realizing that there's the actual work, the actual operation, the actual value even is actually is on the people layer.
Yeah.
And when you were talking through I want to get to this demographic, or the small business person, like, what they want to hear, this is how I feel. And again, I'm curious if I'm getting it right. They'll probably be like, we got you, we can help you, like they want to hear that sounds like, okay, this is, there's someone here that can help me solve it. And then the details comes afterwards. It's almost that resolution, like striving for the resolution versus sort of like striving for the information. You know what I mean? Like it's like the change of their, like, sort of like, let me give you all the information. Let me instead tell you that, hey, we can resolve this. We'll get you there. Let's unpack it, type of thing.
Yeah. I totally agree. And what's kind of bipolar about the whole situation is that, to me, like incident management and dealing with a specific issue with a customer, and there's a strong human element that needs to be there to, in the moment, you'd appreciate the problem they're going through right now. And to your point, it's not about throwing data or even a product at them. It's, we're going to figure this out. Let's take a step back and let the human element shine in that moment. But also, to your point, then strategy is driven by data. So to see trends and to see, where we're failing and where we're succeeding, that does require data. That does require some level of almost like a patient-doctor relationship to what's happening too. So they're both right. It's just how you apply it, whether it's in the moment or it's looking at the big picture. Both those lenses are equally important. And I think we get it wrong, where we try to step back in the moment, which is the wrong time. And then we get emotional about the strategy, which sometimes can also be the wrong time to do it. So you have to juggle both.
I like the doctor analogy a lot, because this is kind of like where I was going with it too. Is, that's the funny thing about, like, people going to the doctor these days. You want the doctor, the real sort of like an interaction is, or like the right interaction, I should say, or the interaction that the doctor expects is to basically you tell them, hey, I don't feel very good. I have this type of experience. And then they would ask you follow-up question. Did you do this? Did you do that? And together, sort of like through that Q&A, trying to create a diagnosis. Today, though, a lot of people just go search online, Google, they come to the doctor and be like, I think I have X. You know, and the doctor's like, whoa, wait a second. Let's zoom out and tell me, like, and then to your point, it's like the use of data is critical for the diagnostic, but like by who and when, and we kind of talk before the conversation about the famous quote of Henry Ford, if you want to share it, but I honestly think it's very related. So maybe we can talk through it for a second and can connect back to it.
Yeah, the thing I hate, probably the most cringeworthy quote that I hear from technology people is, "Hey, tell me your requirements." The problem with that statement is you're basically asking your customer or the individual with an issue to basically boil down the solution for you already before you have a chance to really understand what problem they're really trying to solve. Because a problem statement isn't necessarily a requirement. It's just, hey, I've got an issue. And, to your point, Henry Ford was quoted by saying that if I had gone out and asked people what they really wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. But I was trying to solve a very different problem. And with that, in technology particularly, if technologists already have a technology in their head that they want to bring to the table, it's almost like technology looking for a problem. Like, I have the solution over here, but I don't have enough problems to solve with it. So let me go out and ask my customer in an almost weighted or directed way to get them to answer that, hey, by the way, this tool is going to fix it. And in fact, that's not really what they're asking. And basically divorcing yourself, and this is the bipolar part of this, you have to stop being a technologist for at least 30 minutes and sitting there like a doctor and just say, just tell me what your worst pain is. Tell me what the thing you hate about day to day right now, managing your operation, getting through a day. What is it that you're struggling with the most? Just take the tech out of it for a moment. The thing that's hardest to understand for you, the thing that if you could fix this one thing, and then just listen. And sometimes you may not have a solution at all, but eventually your customer becomes to rely on you to share, hey, I got 5 problems, 6 problems, 7 problems. You might be able to solve 2 of them, and that's okay. We don't have to solve everything, which is, by the way, the other crux of a technologist is, I'm going to solve every one of your problems. Like, well, let's just take a step back. I'd be happy to solve 1 of their 7 problems, maybe 2 if I'm having a great week. But let's just be that trusted advisor to our business and help them solve those problems, which may not necessarily be this whiz bang amazing piece of tech. It may just be a human element that takes some time to tweak what we already have so they can do their job better.
I think this is really, really important kind of lesson. You know what's funny about the quote from Ford? This is absolutely true. I completely agree with you with the requirement piece. Like, there's this is very, very common. It's like, hey, let's talk through your problem, but actually, you know what? Why don't you already give me the solution? I think again, that comparison to the doctor situation is actually very interesting, that we kind of uncovered here, because a part of that too is the bias, unintentional bias, but the bias that exists on both sides. Sometimes on the technologist or the operator, and sometimes on the customer, that can inhibit the sort of like the first principle approach to actually understand what the problem is. And to your point, by the way, do you even need a solution? Maybe you need to delete that problem. Maybe you just need to stop doing it. Maybe the solution is just not doing it anymore. Maybe the solution is, like you said, tweaking stuff. Maybe the solution is actually change the timing or the weight of things, or like the distribution of work. And then maybe a technology can help you do that, and maybe you don't need a technology to do it. There's a lot of ways to go about it, but I find it interesting how much not trivial it is for people to be critical, thinking about the fact that everyone, all the time, every one of us, including me, you, and all the people that are in that positions, have their own bias into, like, sometimes this is how it used to be, or this is how I'm used to it, or this is what we already have, or it will be too expensive, or it will be too hard, or it will be too this and that, and clouding their ability to start asking that initial question, which is, tell me your pain, and then don't take it for the sake of it, and try to understand why. And again, I think a good doctor diagnosing a situation, a problem, would approach it with a first principle approach, because doctors make those mistakes too sometimes, right? They'll be like, I just had a case of this that sounds very similar. you probably have this. Here's a prescription, versus like,
Right.
wait a second, it might be actually completely unrelated, that symptoms of it.
Right.
So sometimes I talk about it in the sense of, operation, process, IT. A lot of folks that are problem solvers, sometimes I feel like we're all product people. We just don't know it yet, type of thing.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about like what this expectation is from like a product leader or product manager, is to do
Yep.
exactly what you just said, right? Is like, stick to the noise, forget about what technology can do, what our technology can do, what marketing want to say,
Yeah.
what sales want to sell. What is the actual use? That's a good person. Like, what is the actual user, customer?
Yeah.
What do they actually really do, like, need? And so,
Right.
and sometimes, understanding that, and then iterate from there, right? So sometimes understanding that simple thing is useful. So how, maybe step back again, going to the fact that you guys are an interesting point, right? You have your own internal needs and operational challenges and strategies, and then there's how you help all the other clients to do a similar
Right.
strategies and challenges. How do you, like, what are some of the secret sauce or some of the playbooks in which you kind of find parallels, or that you sort of like bring either from internally to the playbook that you help customers, or the opposite, things that you kind of see, the tips you give your customers and you guys manifest internally?
Yeah, there's a few different angles. I mean, one in particular, being a fairly M&A driven company, you do get a lot of this is the way we've always done it. You get all those conversations where when you start asking the questions, why are you doing this way? And probably the hardest problem of an IT person, because we are a service organization and we like to satisfy our customers. So saying no or saying you're wrong, these are inherently difficult conversations. But when there's a particular business or a team inside the company who feels that the way we're doing this is the right way because we've always done it this way for the past 30 years, and then you go out and try to find a piece of technology to solve this problem, well, it doesn't fit. Nothing fits because you start realizing that the way they're doing this is inherently wrong. And that is the hardest, if I could say, probably the biggest failing of IT before, to your point, leaping straight to the quote unquote requirement, understanding the problem first, and then being able to build that credibility and trust with your customer to be able to tell them that, if you would just change this process a little bit, it would fit really well with this. But as you stand now, I may not have anything that can fix your problem because I think part of the problem is how you're doing business. And that's a tough conversation to have. And because IT is all about efficiency, we don't necessarily tend to put, I hate to say it this way, but that human element right up front again, where let's just start with the conversation. We tend to start with open a ticket, give me a request, and then we'll go chew on that. We'll figure out how to solve your problem for you, which tends to get both sides in trouble pretty quick because they underestimated the size of the problem and the amount of change that was required to really fix what's happening, which could be even a data problem. And so you could both be wrong. And that's even a more difficult situation to be in. So it's, and generally this, right back to the beginning of our conversation, it does get back to a certain level of trust, even with your customers, that's needed. That I'm not here to sell you anything that you don't want. I'm here to, and by the way, this may actually be me telling you some news that might not be easy to hear the first few conversations, that if you just alter the way you're doing business, these products would maybe fall back in line with, and by the way, we may not actually have something on the box. That may take some time too. So it's always interesting back and forth.
It's quite funny how like everyone wants better, everyone wants progress, everyone wants innovation, everyone wants improvement, but no one wants change.
Right. Right.
And how can it be better if it's not different? You know.
No, no, and we have this struggle too, because we tend to be bipolar in our business as well, which, we all obviously throw labels and everything. It's just this a society, whether it's Gen Z or a boomer, and you have these labels on your customers, and you say, well, this demographic is going to behave this way to this change, so we're going to have to create a whole new way of making this change happen for this group, but this group over here will be totally fine with it. And so, to your point, we as a society, at least I've found, even inside IT, even changing IT, which we're supposed to be able to embrace change in IT, but we don't. We even have people that are fairly religious. I just use that word, but about a particular tech or a tool. Like, I've used this for 20 years. It always works. That's what I want to use. And you have to kind of say, well, we're going to get off that now, and we're going to move this way, and here's why. It's always interesting.
It's human nature. That's why they call it growth pains, because it's painful to grow. It's you need to break some tissues in order to grow them. It's fascinating. Well, maybe going into sort of like more of the personal aspect of it, maybe kind of like as we get to the end of this great convo, what would be, I'd like to ask, what was an advice you got, early in your career or in your personal life, or something that sort of like follows you around and you sort of like, give to other people that is worth sharing?
For me, and this may not jump right off the page the first time I say it, but I had someone pull me aside once, because I was my very first consulting job. I was working 60-hour weeks, Saturdays and Sundays, and someone pulled me aside and said, the definition of making it, by the way, if you just want to know, and he goes, is you stop getting paid for what you're doing and you start getting paid for what you know. And I didn't understand it quite in the moment, but it stuck with me, because I just felt that I had to do all of it. It was all on my shoulders. I have to go do it. I have to fix all these issues myself. But appreciating what I know and being able to delegate that and train others and build a team is really what he was saying. And that stuck with me for so many years. I didn't even fully appreciate it for many years after that. But it stuck with me that I'm not really going to be able to solve the bigger problems on my own. This will never, I won't scale. So if I make it my mission to learn as much as I can along the way and be able to pass that along and be able to bring others into that umbrella and also with the same mission, then I'm going to accomplish a lot more than I ever would on my own. And so it took me quite a few years to figure that out.
Well, I love it. I think it's a beautiful way to tie the bow back to actually do that trust and the human part of it too. It's just about the action ability of the certain tasks, or taking it and just go run it in Rumble style. But it's actually how do you kind of create that vulnerability? It's where you start from, right? Create that vulnerability that you trust that your experience and your the miles you walked are, sort of like what is the value that you bring to the table.
Right.
I think it's
Absolutely.
great. I appreciate you for sharing that.
Oh, no, I'm glad to.
Well, this was great conversation. If anyone want to follow up, chat more, nerd more about those things, where can they find you? Is that LinkedIn, Twitter?
Yeah, I actually have a fairly public profile out there, so anybody should be able to message me. Happy to talk about, IT in general, or even about Newfold Digital in general. We're in a rapid evolution as a company, so we recognize things we do well. We also recognize things we don't do well, and we're working through that, as with any business. So happy to discuss that as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Michael. That was great conversation. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.